Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by JTO Sullivan, UC Davis legend, currently, I won't call it the owner of QB School. You're going to give me the right titles of all that there, but super excited to talk to you. It's been a long time. I want to pick your brain on a lot of the things you're doing and where you found some success or not in the coaching space, especially the hybrid model that you've now figured out how to provide tremendous value for people in. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, excited to talk some ball, see where this thing goes.
Let's do it. So if you can go all the way back to the beginning, Coach, first picked up the ball, how'd you get into this? Your playing career, your post-playing career to the point where now you've embraced this entrepreneurial opportunity to teach the next generation of quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think I grew up like many kids of the 80s and 90s, just like loved playing sports, was a seasonal athlete, did whatever was the neighborhood kids were doing. Grew up playing everything: soccer, basketball, football, flag, baseball. Transitioned to high school. I was in Sacramento for high school, went to Jesuit, played football and baseball there in a pretty competitive environment. Had success, but not had team success and had individual success, but wasn't a big time recruit by any means. Took a few trips, and basically the best opportunity for me was Davis at the time, Division II non-scholarship football program. And got an opportunity to get a bunch of bruises and depth chart issues where nobody found out about it. It was never a big story, but were certainly meaningful scars for me. And I got an opportunity to learn a lot of great ball, play with a lot of great people. And that was really the foundation for kind of how I go about sports. I got real lucky at Jesuit because Jesuit had a Davis quarterback as the head coach, athletic director. And so I've got that long runway of that experience, had a great experience at Davis, got drafted in the 6th round, bounced around the league for a decade, played for a third of the league. And that was a great opportunity as a pro. But certainly, again, if you get cut a bunch, you understand what it's like to be on the bottom of a roster and fighting and clawing to make a career out of it. During that, probably at Davis, I probably thought, if you would have asked me, I probably would have thought I would go into college coaching, just because I loved ball and that just was where all my interest was. The more I was around that lifestyle, the faster I realized, when I was a pro, I realized pretty quickly that I did not want to do that. And so got tired of moving, getting cut, moving. I thought it's even worse for the coaches' families and those things. It just from a close perspective, it looked like a not great lifestyle for me. And so as I was transitioning out of playing in the off season, I started going back to school, get my master's, and I realized that I liked going to school when I was a student athlete. It was pretty easy, actually, when you do the reading and show up. And so thought that
Life skill number one, show up.
Just do the reading and go to class and good things happen. But I enjoyed it too. And so from there, I transitioned into getting my master's, going to get a doctorate, PhD at USD in San Diego. And getting accepted to that was the final kind of, all right, I'm done playing right now. I'm going to go do a student. That transitioned into trying to aspire to be a college athletic administrator, just because I loved sports. It wasn't necessary. I always tell people all the time, it wasn't necessarily that I loved football. I just kept playing football. You know, I'm still mad at my college coaches for not letting me play baseball in the spring, but they do that trick. You got to be at spring practice to be the guy. But it's one of those things where I just love sports, still love sports. And the college athletic thing didn't work out, but it did allow me to experience how much I do love all those different sports, and whether I'm coaching my kids in the youth sector or just being able to dive back into what sports give a community and a young person and those types of things. And so as I was transitioning out of getting my doctorate in intercollegiate athletics, I got back into high school football and took a job for 3 years. To be honest with you, it felt like 30 years just because it was right during COVID and all that experience, but had a good experience, and we won a lot and scored a lot. But again, I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't necessarily for me, and I certainly wasn't going to miss my kids' games to coach other people's kids. And so it was easy to transition out of that. And while I was coaching high school, I had gotten into the content creation world and kind of lucked into YouTube. And the YouTube thing, it sounds simple when you say YouTube thing, but it's really a bunch of different streams make it go. So a combination of a Patreon membership service, selling courses, also the YouTube thing, different social media channels that all kind of funnel together to basically let me do whatever I want football content wise, it's almost always quarterback centric, but it's very offensive football centric. And there's a community of people that really seem to enjoy it and support it. And it really lets me able to follow my curiosity and give back to the game in my little sector.
That's awesome. I want to dig into that business piece in a little bit, but I want to go back to your comment about the scars you got coming through the ranks, especially at the college level, depth chart things. Obviously, that continues on as a pro. Can you talk about a couple of those or some ways in which those have informed your own journey and what you were able to take away from those as you had to pound that stone for 10 years and play for a third of the league?
Yeah, sure. There's one main one when I was so the guy who played ahead of me at Davis as the quarterback went to the league, was a very good college player, Kevin Daft. He's still a college coordinator somewhere. So I got a chance to watch him for 2 years, but I redshirted the first year, and so it wasn't really on the depth chart. But then my redshirt freshman year, I went into that with him being the starter, him being going to be drafted as like, all right, I'm going to win this backup job and be ready to be the placeholder for what's next. And so in that camp, I was battling for the 2, and coming out of that camp, I was the 4. And so I didn't even travel that second year. It was a real ego shock. Not an ego shock. It was a real disappointment. I was pissed. I could still remember the feedback I got from the coach. I still don't believe it. I was just one of those things where I didn't agree with the decision, but it did give me an opportunity to take a few months during that season, and I didn't have to worry about anything. I was never going to play. I'm the 4th guy. Wasn't even traveling. I was at home. The team's traveling. I'm embarrassed. People are like, "Aren't you on the team?" And I'm like, and so I really took those scars and that time to readjust what I thought my preparation was. It wasn't that I didn't take it seriously. I took it seriously. I loved ball, but was I invested in the weight room? Was I invested in my nutrition? Was I invested in my strength? Everything I was doing. I basically became, and by default, not necessarily because of anybody, I had help with certain trainers, but I basically became a pro. That the same things I did from my freshman to sophomore year are the same things I did as a 7th and 8th year NFL veteran. There was no change in the calendar. There was no change in the process. I basically went from being a high school kid who thought I should play college to being a pro, and the pro approach to it. And so that work ethic, like that grind, knowing what it takes to put in 6 days a week for a whole year, times that by, now you're talking about 14 years. All of a sudden you put in some significant work, and you know what it takes and what it takes to feel like you're ready, have your body ready, have your mind ready, be ready to compete, those types of things that don't think it would have happened if I would have been the 2 coming out of that year. It changed my approach. And my kids probably don't appreciate it, but I'll remind them all the time, like it's one of those things where, very few people know exactly what it takes. Even if it's anecdotally, I can tell you what it takes to transition from being a high schooler to a college player to a pro player, and what it looks like and what the difference is, because I literally did it in real time. And so those kinds of things to me are the same thing that people love to say all the time. Oh, there's so many transferable skills from sports to industry to business to whatever. But the one thing, if you really understand what it's like to put in the work and do the work when no one's watching, and be willing to appreciate that grind and like that, then yeah, you can apply that to anything, but you're not going to get paid for that. You still got to get.
And it's funny because you already got to the answer I was going to ask you. Do you think you get there without that moment? And you said no. However, in that moment, right, where you said, I still don't agree with the assessment, but it was able to inspire, pick a word, you to reassess how you were doing things. How have you seen that come up in other aspects of your life where you had to look in the mirror because I thought I wanted to be a college coach? I realized quickly I didn't. I pivoted. It's not like your work ethic changed, but like, how did that moment for you as a football player, obviously as an athlete, also transition and stay with you? Are there examples you can give of that, even as you're being a parent, as you're going through this YouTube journey, some of the other things that you've been able to lean on?
Sure. It's one of those things. It's a fine line, right? Because I was one of those athletes, and maybe even adult, that were like, I have no problem carrying a grudge with this kind of stuff, or chips on my shoulder. So many chips, you got a mountain or a boulder, those types of things. And I think that there's a lot of utility in that as a player and even as a coach, but there's not a lot of utility as like a human walking around. And so being able to find I personally I really dislike the word balance. People talk about balance all the time and whatever work-life balance in athletics. I find that there's a harmony to how you hold those things. And if you have the capacity to, yeah, when I'm in the weight room, when I'm on the field, when I'm with my teammates, when I'm heading an organization or a program, to find fuel and fire in those kinds of things that don't make a lot of sense to walk around like on a Friday morning holding those things, but it is useful. I found it useful for me to hold those things in competition settings where absolutely that's something that was useful for me. And it transitioned all the way into the league where I had guys, I've sat down, I've been cut from by Bill Belichick, and I have to sit there and listen to him tell me why I'm getting cut. And I get it from a business standpoint, but I can also disagree with him. And we can say, I can say, thank you for the opportunity. And I'm going to try to beat your ass the next time I see you on a Sunday. And, that's what happens. And so it's one of those things where it doesn't get any easier, but I think once you go through it the first time, you can say, oh yeah, I've been through this. Though it's not, the world's not burning around me. This is part of the role, part of the job, part of the sector. And I might not love it. And obviously I don't love it enough to be a coach at that level right now, but I can also appreciate the fact that from a competitor standpoint, there's nothing better than competing at the highest level and all the things that go around it besides for just the money.
Very interesting tension arc you just brought up. I can understand it from a business perspective, but I don't have to agree with you. And in that space, right, especially in the position that you chose, like only one dude gets to play, right? My son decided he wanted to be a quarterback 4 or 5 years ago, and it's, are you sure? If you're not the dude, you're not playing. It's, yeah, I want to do this. And that's an interesting choice in itself. So how do you find harmony, not balance, but how do you figure that out as you're going through that journey, knowing that there can only be one, like the Highlander back when we were growing up, right? But like, how do you navigate that tension arc? Is, yeah, cool, man. Like, I get the business choice, I get your coaching assessment. I don't agree. I'm gonna prove you wrong. And knowing that you're always carrying that baggage as the quarterback, right? To a certain degree, because there's only one of you gets to play.
Yeah, I think naturally or some organically, the guys that thrive in this role don't necessarily choose to play it. It pulls them towards it, right? Like it takes a special type of cat to want the ball at every single time, to be able to say, hey, when it goes wrong, it's on me. I can do better, stand in front of the team. Even to just, if you're at a younger level, it can be really intimidating for guys to get in the huddle. I remember explicitly a huddle when I was at Davis, when I was my first year there redshirting. You're in a huddle in football. Usually the quarterback is by one of the tackles and like a wide receiver. And both these guys were veteran guys. I'm a 17-year-old, 18-year-old high school kid, and they're drinking, having a blast, enjoying college. And I've got to tell them what to do. And one guy tells me to do something. I say, yo, bro, shut your mouth in my huddle. Those types of things. Those are different. You've got to be wired a little different to be able to do those types of things. But to me, it was never a choice. I don't remember ever being like, God, I'm going to play quarterback. It was always like, obviously I want to play quarterback. Like they touch the ball all the time. Like I like throwing it. Like, yeah, I want to play quarterback. And it's one of those things where, to me, I think it's part of the deal. To your point, it is a unique perspective. And I think it gets even more unique at the higher levels because there definitely is a pecking order. When you're say you're at a high school, it's pretty obvious, whatever, let's just say the senior is going to play, the sophomore is going to be the backup, like those types of things. But when you're in the league, this guy's getting paid. I'm getting paid backup money. He's getting paid starter money. There's no weird dynamic, but we also have to collaborate. We also have to win or else we're all going to get fired. It's a weird, unique room, but you're also dealing with a bunch of guys who, if history proves you right, they're all going to be coaches, probably some coordinators in the room that are backup quarterbacks. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. Everybody loves ball. But very rarely do you have guys that I would say are, not necessarily the greatest team first guys. They're almost always team first guys. Sometimes you get a dud in there and those things sort themselves out. But it's different than a normal football room where you go in there and you're dealing with a guy who maybe is just off the streets and he's going to be on the team for a week. Those things are different types of cats, where the quarterback room is a sacred room where guys compete, collaborate, push for each other's success, but realize only one guy can play. And you certainly don't want the other guy to get hurt. But if that guy does get hurt and has to come out, then yeah, I'm going to go in there and play well and get paid too. So it's a unique environment like that.
Yeah, it has to be. And I'm thinking as you're talking, you take, I don't know, the Brock Purdy's of the world, who in theory is drafted as a backup and finds his way into a starting role. And you go back to like when Pat Riley took over the Heat and told Antoine Walker, I play my money. How much of that factors into it as you're trying to position yourself as a real option and they give a gazillion dollars to someone else and it's just they're not performing, but hey, we got to play our money. What's that like? How do you navigate that knowing what you know now? And how do you advise people that may find themselves in adjacent positions to deal with that type of situation where you can't really do anything else?
I think it's one of those things where an easy default is the capacity. You're learning to be a pro at what that looks like in that moment, to be able to realize, hey, if you're a low level guy, you might never get an opportunity. You're hoping for an opportunity. And when you get an opportunity, the Brock story is amazing because he made it work. He's thrived. That's a great organization right now. He got paid, those types of things. But that's definitely the anomaly. It's oftentimes, hey, I got to get an opportunity. I'm trying to make a career out of this. If I get a couple good starts, that can transition into another opportunity somewhere else to maybe now I'm a solidified two, maybe a long-term opportunity to play comes up, those types of things where you just always have to have the capacity to make sure that you're ready to go. And if you're not ready to go, and really, and you know this around athletics, where like, you have to be ready to go at practice. You have to be ready to go in the moment's notice anytime. And so those types of things, it's a natural funnel where the time you get to that point of sports, most of those people are wired that way. And if they're not wired that way, they're not going to be around very long. And that league and that level of sports will chew you up and spit you out real quickly. So anybody who survives a few years playing professional sports at any level is going to have some unbelievable resilience, but it's also going to have the capacity to realize, oh yeah, I can. And I don't like to say it's like a switch. I like to think of it as almost like an amplifier. I've got the capacity to crank this thing up in a heartbeat. I can do it at any time. And so those types of things, I think I had to learn that. I had to watch people do it, but it's just like anything, it's a learned skill. And once you have it, you can carry it with you.
And in regards to your earlier comment, is I learned how to be a pro after that depth chart moment, and I had to start training like that. And I've lived this out, and I know the difference between being a high school player, a college player, and a pro. How would you describe that, number one, for people that really don't understand it and how different it is? And then I'm also curious, like, once you reach that level, how much of your opportunity, success, performance is physical, right, on the field versus like preparation work? Whereas, like in high school, it's like you're going to practice for 2 hours, you're going to study, whatever, but your time is limited versus on the other. And I got to imagine it's completely reversed. But anyway, I'm just curious about those steps and the difference between each of those as you would describe it for aspiring coaches, athletes, whatever it may be, because it is different.
Yeah, I would say my high school experience was I took the playing part of it real serious, working on throwing, working on my craft, working in the cages, working on the physical, like the on the field, playing the sport. I would say the next level of it was the off the field commitment, the real weight room, not like a PE class, but like real weight room, real nutrition, real fuel, real explosiveness training, real speed training. Basically, you're essentially on the track team if you're on the football team. Those types of things that you're just when I was in high school, it wasn't that I didn't do. It's not that I chose not to do them. I didn't even know that was part of the deal. So learning what it's like to train like a pro, learning what it's like to lift and increase your explosiveness, you change your direction, your agility, and then feel that go from, okay, I know what I used to play like, now this is how I play after doing this. I really like this, so I'm going to keep this going. And then 10 years later, you're the compound improvement, you're like a different person, you're a different athlete. And so that part of it was the main physical difference. The like off the field stuff, to me, I just always loved ball. Like I always just treated it like a high level course. It was always important to me to feel like I was prepared. I never walked into a meeting where I didn't feel prepared in the league. I joke with my kids now, I'm basically a sports Uber for my kids' youth sports. But I always joke, I'm like, yo, bro, I've never been late in my life. I still wake up nightmares being late in the league. I've never been late for anything ever in my life. And those types of things, those parts are how I think about the off-season part of it. It's been interesting because I have a son who's a sophomore, who's a quarterback who can really spin it and plays baseball. But it's funny to see it's just a different generation. It's a different approach. He likes it. He has fun with it, but he definitely gets mad at some of my like off the field nudges where I'm like, yeah, bro, like I know what you're doing, and then I also know what these other people are doing, and there's a difference. And so you have to be willing to, if you're not willing to do those other things, eventually people are going to catch up to the DNA or catch up to the physical kind of advantages you might have had earlier.
Yeah, and I would think in your case, not just the physical, but the cerebral advantages. And I won't say I joke, but my children have all come through, right, and played three sports each. And I'm the AD and I'm a 30-year basketball coach. And it's, yeah, I can help you with this. And there's an implied deal that they're taking away just from being around. And then there's the next level of, yo, Dad, can we sit down and go over this? And it's like, how does that play out? And how have you navigated that as a parent? In, let's call it, is this your oldest?
Yeah.
Your first go around?
Yeah, I would say not great. The easiest way to say it is I try to use the template that my dad used with me. And my dad was not necessarily an overly athletic dude. He loved sports and he loved baseball. But he basically said, anytime you want to practice, I'm available. So you want to play catch, I'm available. You want me to go stand on the field and throw routes to me, I'm available. You want me to hit you grounders, I'm available. So I basically tell my kids that I'm always available. The high schooler, that's all I do. I tell them I'm available. So you want to play catch, I'm happy to play catch. You want to do baseball, I'm happy to do baseball. The other two kids, I coach. I'm their like rec coach. So they get to deal with Coach Dad, and Coach Dad has different expectations about what that looks like. They like the idea of that more than they like it. So it's one of those things where I'm super fortunate. I got a lot of time to do this kind of thing because I really like it, and it made a huge impact on me growing up. But I don't like, with my oldest son in the football, we don't sit down and watch film. We don't sit down and go over. He'll send me stuff. He'll send me video. He'll send me things. What do you think about this? Would you look at that? But I don't instigate those conversations. I try to I want his journey to be his journey and not my journey, the good and the bad. And so sports was a great trampoline in my life. I would love it if my kids love sports, but I also know that there's probably a heavy issue walking around playing a position your dad played professionally. So those things, I want to give him the space to navigate his own path.
Yeah, no, it's a tough balancing act, right? Especially given the knowledge that you hold within and opportunities you probably have to help. And hey, I'm here if you need me, waiting for him to come and then watching. Damn, man, I can help you with that. I know what that feels like.
Exactly.
All right, so you coach high school for 3 years. Take me through that. In big picture, what I usually ask, right? What did you realize right away you needed to figure out? What'd you learn by like watching other teams that you've been able to steal? I don't want to dig into your full coaching career there. I want to focus on some of this other stuff, but I would be curious to know, you said you got into it and it felt like 30 years, which I know very much what that feels like 30 years in. But why? You go into it with this optimism, this I can do this, and then it's holy cow, this is a lot. Talk me through that part of the journey.
Yeah, I made a ridiculous amount of mistakes. The first massive mistake was that I overlaid like an NFL template for a staff on the high school level. And so what I should have done going into the first spring is just me and the other coach that I played with at Davis, who was my defense coordinator. We could have done the spring by ourselves and just seen where we're at as a roster, as a program, and then filled in the gaps for the staff. Instead, I hired every position coach. And so it was just I made mistakes with that. I brought people on. I kept people from the previous staff that I shouldn't have. And so I remedied that really quickly in the fall. I'm not afraid to make changes once I realize there's a change that has to be made. The other part that I would say scheme-wise that I did is I created the offense that I would want to play in. And so but the reality was I didn't have me playing. And so I had to be adaptive enough to morph it into what our roster was, to what our guys could do. And so again, we changed fast, but we didn't change fast enough to have a super successful first year. Then after that first year, I was like, all right, I know what I need to do. I know what we have coming through the pipeline. We can make these kind of adjustments in how we're training, what we're doing on the field. But then COVID hit. And COVID impacts people in massive levels. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I had some huge COVID terrible experience. From a sports standpoint, but in California, there were all sorts of weirdo regulations. Like you had to do So basically, we did, I would say the nicest way I could put it is we lived on the edge as far as being able to do as much as we could possibly do the whole time. Part of it selfishly just for me. Like I wanted to be out of the house. We were in a park, we're a club, we're renting fields, like we're doing workouts in the outside, but we did a lot. And so when that first fall happened and we didn't go, we had already done a lot to ramp up in case we were ready to go. Then we just kept it going through the fall. We kept it going through the winter. Now all of a sudden we're into the spring, and I've been telling these guys, these seniors, like, hey, like you got to be ready to go. We don't know when this is going to happen. We got to be super fluid. And we were like living the model the whole time anyway. We got to be adaptive. We got to be fluid. The schedule's changing. You got to be ready to go. It's probably going to happen. It's probably going to happen. And I was like, oh shit, I hope this happens because these guys have worked really hard. And so we end up having that spring season. We end up kicking the shit out of everybody damn near that we played because we had been practicing for 18 months. We were as prepared as anything I've ever been a part of. I didn't even need game plans. We had so many plays at that point. It was just, and so that kind of carried into the following fall where we were really good. But that felt like a really long, continuous schedule for me. And I was just, and
we
my
had
son
no
was
off
coming into
season,
high
right?
school.
That whole time you had no off season.
And it was all like a bizarre intensity where you're worried about like weird things. And when you're in it at the time, that was just the reality of it. But it was great because we got really good, and other people didn't do that kind of work. And so we had these 2 great seasons. And at the end of it, I was like I invested so much with this group of people. This group of people was all leaving, and I needed a break. And so it was just like a nice transition to be like, hey, I'm really going to dive into the channel. The channel is doing its own thing, and anything I do away from the channel is hurting me. So it was just an easy kind of step away. But it was a fun experience to be able to see if, hey, can I run the stuff that I want to run and teach it the way that I want to teach it, and do it with a buddy in a local school that hadn't had a lot of success up until that point. Yeah, it was fun, and it was just short.
No, that's super cool. I'm curious as you talk through that. So we've had, I mean, if you go all the way back, like most high school football coaches, some capacity have returned to coach after they've played high school. Maybe they played college, maybe not. And then on occasion, you'll get these guys that have had a pro career somewhere, anywhere, and they come back. And I feel like they're playing like 4D chess compared to the guy that's been doing it for 30 years. Did you feel that way? And were there things you were able to just take advantage of because of the depth of knowledge of what you could do?
Maybe. Like I was always pissed when we didn't score 50 points. Like I'm out there trying to score 70 burger on these people, and we're tempoing people, doing RPOs, all those types of things that are just not fair at the high school level, especially because you can substitute and the defense doesn't get a chance to match the substitution. So like if you're really locked in with what you're doing scheme wise and communication wise on the sideline, you can get huge advantages with those types of things. So yeah, there were things but then when the flip side of that is when you lose, I have to drive over a bridge when I drive to my house. I'm like, this is not what I want to be doing. I shouldn't care this much that we're losing here. This is not safe for me. And so it's just one of those things where we would win and I would be like, yeah, we should win. And then we would lose and I'd be like, hey, this can't be this. There's no way we should be losing by this or doing this. And so it just wasn't, the wins weren't great. The losses were horrific. And it was just one of those things where, but I always used to tell our guys, the team, I was like, the things that we're doing scheme wise are the same things that happen on Sunday. We're just doing a pared down version of what it looks like volume wise. But if I was coordinating for some NFL team, we would be running the same plays with the same communication, the same calls, the same expectations, the same practices, the same walkthrough reps, the same film reps. And so I think it comes with a certain level of authority when you come in and say, yeah, this is how we run it in the league. This is the same way we call it, communicate it, those types of things, that all of a sudden that distracted teenager will be like, yeah, okay, I want to run it like they run it. Those types of things are easier to sell than maybe a guy who has never done it before and just learned it at a clinic.
And now you got me another curious, and then we'll pivot to some other stuff. You mentioned the same reps, the same walkthrough, the same. How does that translate the NFL approach versus a traditional high school approach in time on task, how you practice tackling, how you hit, all of those things? Like, what did you bring with you that was an anomaly based on most people's high school experience?
I can only talk about what we did. I can't necessarily talk about how other high schools are doing, but we would just, I'm also like, I've got all sorts of issues, right? So like when I'm coaching offensive football, I might be the head coach, the play caller, the coordinator, the necessarily like the quarterback coach, position coach, but I'm also the position coach essentially of the offensive line. I'm the position coach of the tight ends. I'm the position coach of the backs. I'm in charge of the walkthroughs. I'm in charge of what the teaching looks like, what the methodology looks like, what the follow-up looks like, what the feedback looks like. I'm doing those kinds of things together. I'm segmenting. A perfect example, people always used to ask me, what did you learn from COVID that you took, that you were forced to do, that now you would do all the time? I used to break up the units where, okay, the run blocking unit is going to walk through this together, and then the skill unit, the fast guys, will walk through it later. For them, it's great that we're breaking up the groups. There's only certain kids, like we do all those things. For me, it's great because I get to be the voice, the consistent voice, the communication, the expectations. But the flip side of it is what was a 2-hour practice is now a 4-hour practice. And I'm fucking exhausted and don't want to see these kids again, but we have to do it again tomorrow. Those types of things where that teaching part of it in the league, there's no way you can have a staff of 20 in high school to be able to be as detail oriented and as locked in as you need to be to play high level offensive football at high school. It just doesn't happen. And then the other part about it, and every state is different, but California as a off campus coach, you're just not around very much. But I have all sorts of flexibility where we're lifting, meeting in the mornings, practicing in the evenings, practicing in the mornings, lifting in the evenings, those types of things where I could do that, but it's not sustainable. Like I couldn't be a dad and have a normal job and think about doing that type of stuff. It just wasn't sustainable.
No, not at all. And that's the dichotomy here of, hey, why aren't you doing this? And it's my coach runs a 5,000 employee business and he's here volunteering his time so that he can give back to the community. And this is when we're going to do it. That's just the reality. All right, let's talk about the channel now. And for people that aren't aware, what is it? Where can they find you? How did it get started? What are the kind of like the key features that you offer that's made it sustainable as you've grown it over this, what'd you say, 7 years now? That is now, this is my full-time deal. This is what I do.
Yeah, it's basically the home hub is a YouTube channel called the QB School. And that really just comes from the QB School is what a lot of teams in the NFL call their off-season program for quarterbacks. So the quarterbacks would come in and you would really just get a head start on the off-season with kind of individual work with your coach, the coordinator, and the head coach. So it was always this cool off-season program where I felt like quarterbacks got a huge head start on what the year would look like. And really, it's grown from the YouTube thing is a front-facing, public, free thing to now I do through Patreon, which is a subscription model, more in-depth things. And it's if the YouTube channel is quarterback centric, the Patreon thing is probably more offensive centric. It's a little bit more scheme centric. And I know for a fact I would not be as successful on the Patreon offensive scheme stuff if I hadn't coached, because the coaching part of it, I could always speak the language. Like I knew what the calls were for the offensive line, but I had never taught what those things are. And so I think taking the high school pared down, super concise, precise language and rules and overlaying that to the league to be able to talk to a kind of super fan, because really it's super fans that are the patrons of this channel. They just love ball. They want more ball. It's basically like being in a quarterback meeting in the NFL. We're watching film, we're talking scheme, we're talking defense, we're talking a high level ball, and it's super, just authentically me. There's no filter, there's nothing other than that. And so I do that membership service, which is really the sustainable revenue river. And then I also offer courses that are more teaching centric, a little bit allow you to go at your own pace, as opposed to maybe drowning in some of these like 2-hour videos where we're watching film and you probably have to rewind it a bunch to understand what we're talking about to get the baseline language. So it's all three of those things: the courses, the Patreon, the YouTube, they all funnel to making this thing be able to go.
And I'm going to assume that all three of those didn't pop off right at the beginning. You started with the YouTube thing, and then how did they grow? How did they evolve? Why 3 different levels? What is the success you've seen in each of those and the clientele that's being attracted to each of those threads?
So I got super lucky in that regard where my brother was basically in front of me at this entire process. He was in the podcast game, he was in the Patreon game, he was in the course game. And so he gave me kind of the blueprint and the template to say, hey, if I did it over again, I would do this first, I would do this second, I would do this third, and they all feed into each other. So the YouTube thing is, a lot of people watch YouTube. It's free, you can pay to get rid of the ads, but for the most part, you can watch these videos for free. That then says, hey, if you want more of that, try this subscription thing, which gives you even more. And adjacent to that is, hey, these digital courses. And again, it timed out pretty well with COVID because everybody's at home. So the timing of people wanting to learn, people wanting to get into that, and they basically like funnel or cycle themselves, where like people will become patrons, people will take the courses, now they'll enjoy the Patreon even more. And so that's just this cycle of kind of them putting together, but they definitely didn't all happen at once. The YouTube channel started. The Patreon was by far the slowest growing one. I had a bunch of growing pains with how I was charging people and what the subscription model looked like. And so once I ironed that out, and Patreon changed in real time too to make it easier, that now is the good thing about Patreon for me, is that's the consistent revenue, where the YouTube thing will bump up in the fall, but it will be inconsistent as far as the amount of views over the course of the year. And then the course thing is more of an off-season centric thing, where there's not a lot of people taking football courses in November.
Who's the target audience of the courses? Do you have like coach level, athlete level, GM level? Is it all the same? Like, how have you thought about structuring those, and where have you landed?
That excellent question. It's the exact same way that I created the channel, to be honest with you. And it's super selfish. It's just me. So like, I am a player or a former player. I am a coach, a former coach. I am a fan, a super fan. So it touches all three of those buckets. Every one of the things should be able to be relatable to all of those people. Now, if you've never seen American football before, you're going to have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. Like, it's going to be Mandarin. But if you touch any of those buckets, where if you play, if you coach, if you love ball, this is made for you. It's not necessarily made for someone who casually watches American football on prime time. This is made for people who like want the all 22, who want the film, who want to know the scheme, those types of things. And that's just the way it is. Like, I don't necessarily like dumb it down for people or anything like that. I expect them to raise their understanding to the level of the content.
For sure. No, that makes sense. I'm curious why you said it wouldn't have worked as well if you hadn't coached. Even given your playing career, your depth of knowledge, your ability to be in a room and go back and forth with the other quarterbacks, you're almost teaching each other at times. But why do you think that was such an important moment in checkbox? Not that's why you did it, to be able to make this thing really go.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't a reason why I did it, but I definitely know that maybe not how I understood the game, but how I had the capacity to communicate the game. And so to be able to simplify it and understand the rules. Like, when you're a quarterback, you hear all these calls in front of you from the offensive line, and you have to know what the calls are, but you don't necessarily know how they got there. Like, you don't know, okay, we're doing this combination block on this technique to that linebacker. Okay, like I can say U2 for U2, but like, how are we really sorting that? What are the rules? What happens if we stunt? What happens if they game? What happens if they pressure? What happens if they move? What happens if they stem? Those types of things where you have to have the rules and you have to communicate it. Once I was able to do that, I felt like then I could really parse down my language and make it as understandable as possible and say, hey, these are the rules to this. It doesn't matter that the 49ers call it whatever, strawberry, and the Raiders call it vanilla. It's the same. These are the rules when you go to this other system. And just like any sport, how we want to play whatever zone, or how we want to defend the pick and roll, or how we want to do something, how we want to break the press, there's only so many different ways to space out the court. And once you have a lexicon to be able to talk about it in a way that doesn't make people feel stupid. I always feel like some people use jargon as a barrier to entry. And so if you have the capacity to break that down and say, hey, this is universal language. It might not be exactly how the Seahawks call this front, but this is how most people call this front. And so if you can understand it from a principle standpoint, you can overlay it to better help your enjoyment to how your team is doing it, or how you understand ball, and to give you a deeper understanding and appreciation to be able to watch these games and have fun with the game.
So from a coaching standpoint, what would you offer across any sport as the low-hanging fruit, 1, 2, 3, to capture what you just said, right? How do you make it simple without making people feel stupid? How do you communicate in that way? Because you're right, like the jargon and the way in which sometimes the expert is thinking about it, they no longer have beginner mind, which gets in the way of them communicating that to their athletes. What would you offer there as a blueprint? Hell, as I'm navigating a group right now where I have 16 kids on the roster, 13 of them are three-sport athletes. I've essentially 1.5 basketball players, and you're trying to coach basketball, right? And it's like figuring out how to layer that in a way that they can execute whatever the task is complicated.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I will tell you anecdotally how it happened for me was I had a coach, Mike McCarthy was my coordinator coming into the league in New Orleans. He's since won a Super Bowl in Green Bay, been the Cowboys head coach. When he would teach concepts, so he would teach whatever, for when we were in the Saints, hey, we're going to teach this play. But then he would also overlay it with the history of the play and how other places he had been would call it and teach it and understand that these aren't in cement rules. This is how we do it because we're this team, this organization right now in ball. But if you go to another team, they might teach it different. And I think a lot of coaches, and for example, I'll throw my college coach under the bus. He was a great guy. He still is a great guy. But he would also, often you can hear coaches, they'll talk in their language, like it's universal language. Oh, we're going to run this whatever route, like we used to call it, like hunt route. Bro, nobody knows what you're talking about. That's not a universal term. Like you've got to be able to say 10-yard in route that has the ability to settle up if there's space or if there's opening, like those kinds of things, to be able to approach it from a lens of, hey, could I understand what you're saying if I'd never picked up a basketball before or if I've never been in your system before? And I think a lot of young coaches can learn those things a little bit more easily nowadays because there is so much information available in every sport. Like for football, for instance, you can hop on and learn damn near any scheme system with a bunch of clinic videos. Now, you might not learn where the bones are buried with a lot of those things and how to fix certain things, but you can certainly learn to speak the language. And all that does is build out your own lexicon to be able to then say, okay, if I'm a high school kid and I don't know what the hell you're talking about, bro, like dumb it down for me so that I can pretend like I'm talking to a kindergartner here and what that takes and what that looks like. And then you overlay it with, how I think most high level sports work, where they install it, talk about it, walk it through, drill it, scrimmage it, talk about it, and then just recycle the thing. And all of a sudden now you got a chance after a couple months of hitting your face against the wall.
I'm going to ask a strange question here. I've asked my coaches this over the years, and as a basketball coach, it's different, but there are times we'll just start playing 5-on-5 right at the beginning of practice. Full court, let's go. And I asked my football coaches, like, hey, when's the last time you just played 11-on-11 to start practice? They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? You don't do that. And have you ever had an experience in all of your time where there was a way to apply that concept in football, right? Where it's just such a different beast, but I'm always just curious, like, how do you apply live playing in a sport where you don't always get to do that?
I will tell you that I've seen that happen many times. Where you're on
Tell
a
me
team,
more.
especially you're on a team that starts slow. So say your first couple games in football, you have gone out there and not scored on your first drive. You look like ass on offense. Guess what we're doing? First period, we'll stretch and we're into blitz pickup full speed. We're going to learn to start faster and we're going to come out the gates with that kind of mindset. Now, I don't think it's necessarily sustainable or something you'd want to do, but the capacity to start fast and do those types of things, I love it. I think in basketball, it's a little bit different because you can, no shade to the basketball world, but you can roll a ball out there and you don't necessarily need to say, hey, we're going to work this, whatever, horns down every single time down the court. You can just play. The transition element of basketball is a little bit different. But the football element of that is, yeah, you got to be able to, and the thing that I always used to do, and that I think hits people sideways, especially in the football world, because there's so much practice as opposed to game, is everything we're doing is to play well in the game. If we're doing anything that's not helping us play well, we're not going to do it. And so that part of it, the practice mindset, for instance, and this used to piss off people, my players, other coaches, teams we were playing, and I stole it from somebody in high school. I read about it. We would not come onto the field to warm up. Like the first time you saw us would be right before the national anthem. And I wouldn't even like to do a national anthem. Like I'd want to just run out the tunnel. We go to our side, coin flip, we go. Because I thought one, in football, I think people go out there and have a full practice before the game and are exhausted. And it's not the same as basketball where you can go get a bunch of shots up and feel really good and go through your routine. There's none of that on the road. Like you don't even know where you're lining up, all that type of shit. I want to come out the tunnel. I want to be fresh and I want to go. And so that part of it, and it was a psychological thing to the other guys. They'd be 20 minutes before the game. They'd be like, they're not even stretching. And we're coming out of the tunnel like a bat out of hell. And so those types of things are things that I just used to like to do. And mostly it was just because our guys were just super immature. They'd go out, get exhausted, try to dunk on the goalposts or do dumbass things, roll their ankle in pregame. And so I was just like, hey, guess what, bro? We're just not doing that. And people would be like, you got to warm up. And we're like, actually, no, you don't. We'll be fine. We stretch in the gym, we walk down the hill, and we play. And so it's little things like that. I was just always trying to get competitive advantages as a coach. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And if I could do little things like that would make other teams feel uncomfortable and get us at our freshest to actually play the game, I was always going to do stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's funny because how you tackle warm-ups is so individual and unique. It may change. Like this year, like I have no confidence that we will get anything out of our like pregame. So we just play live 3-on-3 and 4-on-4 for 8 minutes before the game. Wait, we're not going to do layups for what? We're never shooting that in the game. Let's just play. So we've actually seen a shift in our performance since we started doing that because I was just at wit's end and I'm like, I'm tired of watching this nonsense. Let's just play. So my other question as a football guy that I ask my coaches is there a world in which you line up, you're playing 11-on-11 controlled scrimmage or whatever it is, and it's not like we're going to run this play, but it's like the quarterback is reading, the receivers are reading, you have some sort of like standard blocking scheme, and everybody's got to make the same read, and you see what happens to see like what people's capacity are, right? Where it's like in modern hoop, right? It's all like kind of actions and reads versus run this set play. Is there a version of that exists in football, or is it just too micromanaged?
There are versions of that happen within pockets of units. So I would never say to the quarterback, just do your thing, try to get to the rack. Like those types of things, like that would never happen. But what I used to do, especially for the guys up front, because I was a big believer, especially in the football world, that you build this thing from the inside out. And so I wanted those guys up front to feel like they had all the rules. They had all the answers to the test and that they could play fast and physical and just had to worry about beating the hell out of people. So they had rules for everything. If they didn't understand the rules for what they would see in front of them, then I felt like I really had failed them. And so in that standpoint, I never told them like, hey, we're going to call this play. This is this call for you guys to communicate up there. They had to solve that themselves. That unit had to have the capacity to solve it. And if they didn't, they just didn't play, or it was easy. Like those guys, and they would lean into the ownership part of it. And it can be a little frustrating early on because there's some back and forth as far as expectations and teaching and those types of things. But yeah, there's not like in fact, I would argue it's the opposite on the perimeter, where if you don't have expectations and details and nuance as far as depths and spacing, you really have no chance. There were some systems back in the day, like the run and shoot type stuff, that would have a tree branch of things that wide receivers could do. There are some systems that offer like multiple angles you can take on certain things, but there's not, if it's open to the right, I'm going to go to the right. If it's open to the left, I'm going to go to the left. Not for multiple people, not very often. So that's going to be tough to have any sort of anticipation or be on the same page at a high level ball.
Yeah, and you're making timing throws and you're doing all that, so that all makes sense. And I appreciate the way you explained it to me because it gets me off of I don't understand why you can't just try this. But that's super helpful. All right, I'm very curious now as I'm listening to you. Mike Leach passed away a little while ago, and he was like the insane genius. Did you have anybody that you played for that was just like things that you would never even consider and just find a way to find success?
I was definitely I was never around Coach Leach. I definitely was around players that were around him, and I've certainly read the books and appreciate the stories. Besides for locking people in sheds and stuff, but he probably had the way that he approached it. The way my understanding of it was, he was very interested in making sure that the ball spread out. Like he wanted all 5 eligibles to have the same amount of touches. And I would say I'm probably the antithesis of that, where I always tell the team, and I would tell the parents, this is not rec sports. The best player is going to touch the ball. When the best player is tired, the second best player is going to touch the ball. When the second best player is tired, the third best player is going to touch the ball. If you touch the ball in our program, that means you are one of the absolute best players in the program. We're not doing any sort of intramurals out here. Those types of things where I just didn't think of it like that. I always thought of it, the way that it was coached to me at the highest levels was always thinking of players, not plays. And so I was always tell my guys, especially the quarterbacks, hey, if it's going down and it's 4th in the game, I'm not worried about, we already know what the call is going to be because we prepared every situation we possibly can. But I want you defaulting to, hey, we're going down with our dude. I want to go down riding our horse. I'm not going down throwing it to the 5th best guy, those types of things. I don't care about their guy, their team, especially at the high school level. It's not quite as matchup-y as I would say the Sunday game type thing is, where there are matchups where, hey, this guy might X out somebody for us. I want to go down with our guy and live like that. But I definitely appreciated like the quirkiness and the vibe that Coach Leach had. And he certainly did a lot of things that were fun and certainly had some amazing answers in interviews.
Yeah, which mascot would win. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Is it real, like you just said, the highest level, can a defensive back wipe out a receiver? I just feel like they're always at such a disadvantage that, like, I won't say it's impossible. Obviously, guys do it. But how real is that?
Yeah, I saw it happen in real time, bro. I saw it at Revis Island. We played the Jets when Darrelle Revis first came on the scene nationally. We played him back-to-back weeks, the last week of the regular season and the first week of the playoffs. And he evaporated Ocho. It was an X off the field. It was murder. And so it was one of those things where, you know, you can, there are ways that you can manipulate guys off the line of scrimmage and move them with motion and those types of things. But as far as, hey, this guy is just a freak. And again, at that level, everybody's a freak. So when you start talking about the freaks of freaks, those are guys that are really special. And it's great when they're on. It was great for me when they were on offense, but it wasn't great when they were on the other side of the ball. Now, I didn't have to block them or get open, but you have to deal with them. And just understanding that they're out there and being smart with it doesn't mean that you never throw it at them. It just means that you're maybe not loose with it.
Yeah, I would assume the opposite of that is like the Randy Mosses of the world, right? Where it's just good luck, you're not guarding me.
Yeah, I was with Calvin Johnson his rookie year, and he held out at camp and he was running with the 2s, and I was the backup quarterback, and I was in an offense that had a lot of intricate coverage reads. Mike Martz was the coordinator, and he pulled me to the sideline. It was a timeout in a preseason game. He said, "Listen, throw it 11 feet high to Calvin. I don't care what the coverage is." And that type of stuff just doesn't happen with normal people. Like there is no, I think we went down and scored like 3 plays, and it was just Calvin being Calvin. But those guys are few and far between, but it is fun when you get to be around a unicorn like that.
I can't even imagine when you're dealing with aliens running around the field that are just built differently. I'm gonna wrap up with this, Coach, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and the willingness to get on this. But what is something that you've recently changed your mind on? So as a guy that is authentic, that speaks going back 30 years, what you feel and what you think, right? We often are in this echo chamber these days where we're not rewarded for having dissenting opinion and changing our minds. And so I'm always curious, especially in athletics, trying to have growth mindset, receive feedback, like where you've purposefully put something down and been like, you know what? I don't believe in that anymore. This is now where I'm at. And it doesn't have to be football related, Coach. It could be parenting. It could be how you navigate the world. It can be football. It could be sports, whatever.
Yeah, no, it'll be more sportsish. This is more youth sports for me. My oldest, so I have a 16-year-old, just took his driver's test, passed this morning. Watch out, bro. Keep your head on the swivel.
My son started driving a month ago, so I know where you're at.
A 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And so the 2 younger ones, just give the whole quick story. When I was growing up, it was like right before the travel sports thing happened. There were some like AU baseball, AU basketball, but like it wasn't an industry. And so I was always I liked off seasons. Like I liked giving my arm a break. I liked taking a break from different sports. I loved playing other sports where my kids maybe don't have the same love for playing other sports. And so I fought really hard with the oldest one because he is a very talented rotational athlete. And so I was like, I don't like his buddies were wanted to play travel baseball. And I was just like, I'm like, bro, I just don't think so. Like, and we had other kids playing other sports and it was just a stress. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And then at the very end, he finally broke down and started playing travel baseball. And I would say he didn't have the greatest experience. And half of it, more than half of it was probably my fault, not being proactive in realizing, oh shit, the landscape has changed. Like I didn't realize that it's better baseball. Like my little league experience, my little league all-star experience was awesome.
That's
Nowadays,
all gone, man. They killed it all.
They don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so he had crummy travel ball experience. And it wasn't because he wasn't good at baseball. It was because the organization he was with, I just let him like, oh, his buddy's in it. Well, try this. And so all of a sudden you're like a year later, you're like, that was terrible. That was terrible. And so the other two are the same way as far as they were like, we're not playing soccer anymore. Don't want to play soccer. And I'm like, you're doing something. We're doing something. And so they're like, we'll do travel baseball. And I'm like, all right, this time we're going to be proactive and make sure that I get in a program that I at least not necessarily have to know the director or be comfortable with necessarily everything that they do, but I do want to know the coaches. I do want to have a personal relationship. I want to make sure that I'm doing a more proactive way to make sure they have a good experience, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, here's a monthly fee, drop you off at practice, pick you up. Oh, tournament, great, let's go. Where that's what I did with the oldest, and I felt like that didn't work at all, where now the two younger ones are playing way more baseball than I would ever have played as a youngster, probably more than I even want. But I think they're having a much better experience because they and I have invested time with the coaches. We know the program. Maybe it's not the end all be all where they'll be for their entire career of it, but my mindset shifted from being like, no way, we're not doing this, to, okay, this is if they're competitive, they want to play at the highest level. I'm basically holding them back, saying you're not going to get to do this. And they want to do it, and they're willing to do all those things where I never thought of it like that before. And to be honest with you, it's the same as what I know I'm going to have to go with college athletics, where my experience as a student athlete just doesn't exist anymore. And the reality of the portal, the reality of all those things where, man, it would be great if my kids got to be a real student athlete if they love sports. That's just not the reality. And me letting go of that is my own issue. I'm not going to project it onto them. It's more just, damn, like I met my wife at college. My best friends, some of my best friends, I went through college together, where now these kids are looking to play or get out, play and move up, play and get paid. Those types of things where it's different. Same as it's different with the youth sports.
No, that's great perspective, because it's not there anymore. And when we try to hold on to the nostalgia as far as informing our current decisions, we're not looking at the big picture anymore. And like you said, that whole rec thing, it's gone. It doesn't even exist anymore. You're basically getting YMCA reps if you're not playing the travel sport, because everybody has been pulled out of it, and it's wild. But that's a story for another day, Coach. Appreciate you getting on and taking the time, man.
Yeah, no problem. It was fun.